Our day, we're on page 401. Let's again begin from the paragraph V'chol Yisrael Maminim, and we'll quickly, although we learned a few lines, we'll quickly relearn it, and we'll get right to it because we discussed. Good morning, Moshe Myers. We discussed at length yesterday the overall idea of the Shem Elokim and the Shem Hashem and that whole scenario. Inside, the Chol Yisrael Mamina B'Emunah Pshuta, and all Yidden and all Jews believe with their simple faith. Ella, they believe that what? That Yud Kei Vav Kei, that God Almighty, the supernatural force of God, is the only reality. However, Ella, it remains outside of the person and it doesn't enter the inside. It remains on the periphery. It doesn't impact the brain and the heart in a way that makes you think differently and feel differently. But you have it. We have it. And as the sages say, Yisrael shebechutz ha'aretz, the Yidden that live outside of Eretz Yisrael, avodah zara b'tahara heim, they are worshippers of idols in a kosher way. What a statement! Upeidish Rashi comes along Rashi and says, b'tahara. What does it mean that you worship idols in a pure kosher way? Kleima. This means b'loi kavana. They don't realize that they're worshiping idols, vein samim alev, and they don't pay attention to it. But indeed, somehow, they're worshiping an idol or idols, and we're going to speak about this later in the paragraph. But first, U'lechaira, seemingly, the Rebbe asks a very basic question. Hari Reiv Yisrael, and even according to the figures that Moshe sent me yesterday, 45% of Yidden worldwide live in Eretz HaKodesh. Nevertheless, 65% is the rove, is the majority. So the Gemara's dictum is still true. When it means Hashem that changes, we'll have to explore how to learn that Gemara properly. I'm sure the rabbis will come up with a suggestion how to interpret the Gemara in a way that it doesn't contradict the fact that there are more Yidden living in Eretz HaKodesh, Ken Yehiratzon, very soon, speedily in our day, especially now that people are considering Aliya in a more serious way, being that we have the COVID issue and the riots and like what the Rebbe said in 1991, when the Gulf War happened, the Rebbe said, he quoted the Torah, Ein Hashem Elokecha b'mereish hashana v'ad achaz hashana. The eyes of God are in Eretz Yisrael from the beginning to the end of the year. It's the safest place. And people thought he was out of his mind. And there were people, I know here, people who their children were scheduled to get married in Eretz Yisrael, and the scuds were flying, and they came to the Rebbe asking what should they do, and the Rebbe said, what's the question? You're not going to go? It's the safest place. And, they just went, they gulped and they swallowed it, and those that were Hasidim and had the belief went. And today we see it clearly, with all the enemies and the wolves all around us in Eretz Yisrael, it's still the safest place on earth, no question about it. And I'm saying that it's the safest place, not just from the Torah's perspective, which is the emes and the reality, but even, the fake news, even the scoffers, even the critics will admit that there's no safer place, because here you could live. Look, someone walks up to someone at the door and shoots two people in New Brunswick or East on Sunday, dressed up as a FedEx worker. He had a vendetta against the wife, who was a judge. And he really wanted to kill her, but she was in the basement, so he got to kill the son, who was a 20-year-old budding star student, law student. This happened this Sunday. So, in a white neighborhood, no crime, two upstanding parents are both lawyers. It just happened, and this is constant. So, so what the Gemara says, going back to the Gemara, I'll take your questions a little later. The Gemara says, most Yidden live outside of Eretz Yisrael. So the Rebbe says, how can you, God forbid, say such a thing? That most Jews, they live in outside of Israel, they worship idols in a kosher way. I mean, like, what's going on here? This is surprising and rather harsh. So therefore, the Rebbe's approach to this Gemara is to analyze what does Eretz Yisrael really mean, and this is important for all of us, especially for those living in Eretz HaKodesh. Ella, the Eretz Yisrael. Rather, what does Eretz Yisrael mean? Eretz Lashon Ratzon. The word Eretz is associated with the word Ratz. Ratz is associated with the word Ratzon, will. It desires to do the will of its master. Yisrael who. Now, we say Eretz Yisrael. So we know, Moshe, now that Eretz is associated with the word Ratzon. What about the word Yisrael? Yisrael, who, it's an acronym for Yesh Shishim Ribui Oises LeTorah. There's 600,000 letters in the Torah. The Eretz Yisrael Elu Sheyesh Lem Ratzon BaTorah. Eretz Yisrael means those people that have a will to study and live with the Torah. Whether you live in Timbuktu or you live in Ramla. Wherever you live, if you have a Ratzon LeTorah, you are an Eretz Yisrael Jew. Now what does it mean to have a desire, a Ratzon, a will yoni for Torah? Hu halimud al menas lekayim. It's not just, philosophical learning, but it is a learning of which its objective is al menas, its condition and objective is lekayim, to fulfill, to do. Umekayim bepoyo, and you actually do. It's not just studying at Harvard or Columbia in a divinity class, the Bible. Or lahavdil, in a yeshiva, studying the details of one ox goring another ox, or the four shomrim, the four types of watchmen, when you give them an item to watch for you. And at the end of the day, the father comes home and he says to the son, so what did you learn in yeshiva? I'm paying good tuition, I worked double jobs twice, and I'm up late, I'm schwitzing away to pay tuition for you. Tell me, what are you learning? Oh, Dad, Abba, I'm learning about an ox goring another ox. Is he obligated to pay? Is the owner obligated to pay 50% or 100%? He looks at him, he says, are you out of your mind? I'm paying such tuition and working so hard to send you to a yeshiva to learn about an ox goring another ox? You're cuckoo. Get a job.
Rabbi, I asked that question in the third grade.
Believe me, you weren't the only one to ask the question. But our parents, and your father should be well, and our parents, they understood, especially coming out of Europe, that this is the only way that Yiddishkeit, Judaism, will continue. And not just survive, but thrive. And they were right. Because the entire Baal Tshuva movement is a derivative of people like Reb Shlomo Carlebach, Reb Tuvi Goldstein, the Rebbe, and many others from the Litvak world, the Hasidic world. Everyone started in the 60s and 70s to reach out, bring people back. And they were, why did they have that inspiration? Because they went to yeshiva. And in yeshiva, like I'm writing now about the two brothers, about Ner Yisrael, and Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, the older brother of Noach Weinberg, was really a precursor to Noach Weinberg's emphasis on Kiruv. It really started with his brother. People don't know this. But his brother, who was quite older than him, already, started with Kiruv before him. And from that, Noach got that excitement and actually had a discussion with the Rebbe, which people don't know about, and it's online. You must read that article written by a friend of mine, Rabbi Avram Berkowitz. He met Rabbi Noach Weinberg in a Shefa supermarket in Yerushalayim, and they stood for an hour speaking, and then he helped him bring back his belongings to the car. And he wrote up the article. It's a fascinating read, I think. Where Noach Weinberg, Rabbi Noach Weinberg, tells him that he discussed in 1958. He went into Yechidus with a Rebbe, with his older brother Moshe, who happens to be, people don't know, a Slonim Chassid, a real Slonim Chassid. Rabbi Noach and Rabbi Yaakov, they went the Litvish way more, but the older brother stayed a Slonim Chassid. Yes, Hillel.
Weinberg is the name of the Rebbe's of Shlonim, right?
Yes, they are great. They are grandchildren of the Shlonim Rebbe, and great grandchildren of the Yesod Vavoda. Ben after Ben.
The Nesiv Shalom was not a Weinberg.
No.
Brzezowski or something like that. He must have married in.
He married in. Yes, correct. Yeah. He married Shalom. Right. He married Shalom Brzezowski. But anyway, the point being that because of people like that and others, we have a 45% Jews returning to Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so let's go back to the Maamar. So that's what the Rebbe emphasizes here. It's not just Limud Torah. Moshe Myers, I need you because you're a Kiruv worker. You need to hear what the Rebbe is saying here about Kiruv. He's saying here that Kiruv requires action. And this is an aside note, and I don't want to really spend time in it. We'll never get this Maamar finished. This is why the Chabad approach to Kiruv, or we call it in Chabad Hafotzas Hamayonos Chutza, the dissemination of the well springs to the outside, right? Chabad emphasizes really the Maisa. The Maisa. So the putting on tefillin of one time is tantamount to learning for 10 days. I'm just giving an example, okay? Where the orientation more in the Litvish world of Or Sameach and Esha Torah and probably Chappelle's, I assume there's a greater emphasis on the learning per se on its own versus the Maisa. And again, both are needed, and one without the other is incomplete. But the Rebbe here, clearly, you could see here already in a Maamar 1931, he makes a point of saying, V'haratzon b'Torah, the will of learning Torah, hu alimud al menas l'kayim, and then he adds, u'mekayim b'poyo. It's not just, Moshe, I'm going to learn with the purpose of doing. You gotta do. You can purpose here and purpose there. If you don't do, you didn't do it. You have to do it. Okay. Continuing. Avol Yisrael shemichutza l'rotzei zeh. But a Jew who's outside of this will, they are considered worshippers of idols in a kosher way, b'loi kabana, not knowing, not realizing, a slave. Okay, and he's going to explain that a little later, so let's continue inside. Okay, he's taking every, Moshe, he's taking every word kind of the Chazal and breaking it down. That's what's so beautiful about this paragraph. So the Chazal say that they are Od Avodah Zorah. They worship idols, right? Those living outside of Eretz Yisrael. So the Rebbe is interpreting now in a spiritual sense. Those that are outside of the will of Torah, what does it mean that they worship idols? He says, they worship the sun and the moon and all the heavenly hosts. Hine hagam sheyoidim she'emes hu. Although they know that the truth is, Hashpo hi meito, next page, 402, that the influence coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Yisborech, is from God Almighty. Vashemesh vayoreach, and the sun and the moon, Hemrak mimutzim bilvad, are only intermediaries, as we've been discussing. Elokim is an intermediary for Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, umikol makom. They know this. Nevertheless, mechashvim oisam lemetzias. They give the intermediary prominence. Lemetzias dover umishtachavim aleihem, and they bow to the intermediaries. What does it mean practically? Says the Rebbe, I'm going to tell you. He knows Moshe Braun is listening to the Shir, learning to the Shir, and he wants a practical example. The Rebbe gives it. V'chein hu bi'elu shemekusharim l'chol inyonei ha'olam. This is true for all those that are bound, mekushar, to all inyonei ha'olam, all worldly matters, hazeh, b'hamokas hadas, with the depth of their mind, v'torud umutrad, and they're very busy, kol hayomim, all their days. L'Rabbi Salaylos, the Chazal quote regarding Yetzias Mitzrayim, kol yemei chayecha. It's not just the days. You should tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. All days. L'Rabbos, the Chazal say, this also includes Haleilos. Say it, tell the story at night as well. That's one of the reasons we have a chiyuv to tell the story the night of the 15th of Pesach. What are they busy with? They're busy day and night, beribui tirados, with much anxiety, without knowing what it means to have respite, rest. They can't rest. They're always thinking about this and that, and it bothers them, and it makes them anxious, and they're very, very not at peace with themselves. And God forbid they end up forgetting Aleisav Baruch Hu, on the infinite Hashem, that's Amasaviv Kol Hasibos, that is the cause of all causes. Umazmin loy hasiba v'harebach, and Hashem provides a method, a way, and profit, asher behem yimtzu parnososei, that in that way they will find their parnosa. So the Rebbe says, let's just recap in our words. The Rebbe says that what does it mean today to worship the sun and the moon? What does it mean that people outside of Eretz Yisrael, people that are outside the Ratzon LaTorah, the desire to learn Torah and implement the teachings of Torah, it means that they go towards the Gashmias, they become enmeshed in Gashmias, engrossed in Gashmias, to the point where they're stressed out from the Gashmias, and they think that their activity and their non-stop anxiety and worry and involvement with Gashmias is going to bring them so much more parnasa, and it's just the opposite. You have to make a keli, of course. You have to make a vessel, not be, someone sitting on a couch and surfing the internet day and night and say, God, rain down the money to me. Or sitting in a base medrash and saying, hey, make me a program and make the money come in. Get up and do something. Like I told you, the Belzer Rebbe, about 15 or so years ago, 20 years ago, he always gives his public address, the famous yearly public addresses on Simchas Torah. And 20 years ago, so he addressed his Hasidim in Belz in Yerushalayim, and he told them, the buck stops here. You guys want us to help you with stipends, Kolel stipends and support. We will do our best and continue, but you need to work a half a day. And we'll provide for you ways of getting accounting degrees, bookkeeping degrees, and other ways, but you have to go out and work a half a day. And I repeat always a story that I heard from Ben Brafman. Ben Brafman is a criminal, highly successful criminal lawyer. in the New York area. What?
I used to daven in the same shul in Rottenburg.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So Ben, during the 9 days, we used to have here in Borough Park, it stopped because, the husbands come back during the week for work and the wives and kids are in the country, the Catskills. So, you want to keep them out of trouble. So the system around here is they have these place where you could come and pay a few bucks and you get a good dinner, and then they try to have shiurim. So several years ago, for a few years in a row, they had these major lectures, and one of them was highlighted. It was Ben Brafman is going to speak to the community about being honest in business. Now, naturally, you couldn't get through the door. I was there. There must have been 2,000 people in the Vishnitz Hall here. It was packed. It was standing room only. And he had, I don't want to say who, he had a Hasidic Rebbe sit next to him. Not from the bigger Hasidic Rebbes, but a Hasidic Borough Park Rebbe who was accused of embezzlement or tax fraud, whatever, one of these things. And part of his plea deal, and Ben Brafman was his lawyer, and part of his plea deal was to acknowledge his wrongdoing. And what better acknowledgement is when you have a video camera of 2,000 people with you on the dais and Ben Brafman standing there, and he's saying basically, I'm guilty, and by the way, it worked. I don't know if he got out right away, but it really helped him avoid more jail time. So Ben is speaking, and Ben says to everyone, he says, fellas, I understand the Kollel world. I have a son who's in Yerushalayim, and he's also in a Kollel, but only a half a day. The other half of the day, he works for a living, he says. So he said to everyone, many of you Kollel guys, that's great, but you got to work part-time. At least you have to work. It's good for you, it's good for the system. And he said many other things that are not relevant right now, but it was a fascinating talk and very important. I don't know how many listened to him, but I think some did because, he's someone who knows the ropes. He's a lawyer that defends the biggest criminals. So, here he is giving of his time to our community was a wonderful thing. So why am I saying this? Because the Rebbe says here, the Eibishter, who's Mesabiv Kol HaSibos, Umazmin Loi HaSibeh V'Harevach Asher Behem Yimtzu Parnososoi. This is something we need to knock into our heads, our kids' heads, our friends' heads. You're going to get your parnosa if Hashem wants you to get your parnosa. If He doesn't want, you can make all the vessels, spend so much time, get yourself nervous, and it's not going to work if He doesn't want you to have the parnosa today. And for the same matter, if He wants you to have an abundance of parnosa, 1 second, Hillel, and you don't make the cake, and you don't run around like a meshuggah and knock yourself out and stress yourself out, if He wants to give it to you, it'll come to your door. But again, everything needs to be balanced, not to take these things to an extreme, but it's important. Yes, Hillel?
I just I was wondering and had a thought. The expression in the Chazal that we're explaining here seems a little curious to me that the Chazal chose the term tahara, and the Rebbe's meaning Ovdei Avodah Zorah. That's it's an isser. It's not an issue of tuma and tahara, right? It's it's an isser. It's an issue. You're chayav misa. It's a big thing, but so it seems to me that without saying it directly, the Rebbe is sort of emphasizing that perhaps the reason the Chazal chose the word tahara is he's talking about that how it affects you. Tahara, so you use the term kosher or not kosher, but tahara is like how it affects you, that, here you are, you're living outside of Eretz Yisrael, so to speak, you're outside this realm of ratzon and wanting to mekayem the ratzon and to learn Torah in order to do. And as a result, the effect is the fact that you're not internalizing it. You're not purifying yourself within. That's it. The thought that came to my mind as I was sort of contemplating chewing on the term tahara here, which seems an odd usage.
Right. Please mute yourself. Yeah. Firstly, he might actually speak about it later in the Maamar. I don't know. I didn't look at it that carefully to tell you, but he does use the word tahara because he's being emphatic. I mean, the Gemara is making it's a very, very heavy statement, and the Gemara, there is an idea, and the Rebbe talks about it in one of his sichos, that when it comes to Huma and Tara and kosher and posel, and when it comes to bottom line halachic decisions, you have to be straightforward and as clear as possible. Being forget about political, but elaborating and not saying it's kosher or it's treif, it's pure or it's tamei. Yes, Hillel.
That's today's Daf Yomi. I just read right before it.
Okay.
That it talks about how Hine Yamim Baim Asher Yishachli Rav Ba'aretz, and the Gemara explains that there'll come a time when you'll search through the world, you won't be able to have halacha brura, mishnah brura.
Okay. Asher koyach. No. Kivanti l'das hagdolim. Anyway, so I would say, just again, another way of looking at it to what you said before is that the Gemara says tahara, like, because Yisrael shebechutz la'aretz oiv avodah zara. What other word should have said? Bekashrus. The Gemara is making the point that you think you're on the right path. So you're very pure. You're very pure in your thinking. And the Gemara is saying you're making a big mistake. So the Gemara has to be emphatic. The Gemara has to, say it the way it is. And this is an important lesson, so I'm glad you brought it up. There are times when it's not appropriate to be nice. Because being nice doesn't bring the point home and doesn't help a person wake up and do what they're supposed to do. At the same time, being clear doesn't mean being mean, doesn't mean being vulgar, doesn't mean being selfish, right? But being clear. When you say the word tahara in this context, I believe you're being very clear because it's so emphatic. So what we have from this section of the Maamar is the importance to focus on the Eibishter, right? And now we understand that why the Gemara says Reiv Yisro, that kol ador b'chutz la'aretz, meaning whoever lives outside of the phenomenon, the realm of Torah being the guiding light to a practical approach to life, including and emphasizing your parnasa, is idolatrous, is worshiping an idol. Who's the idol? The dollar bill, themselves, or whatever else. Let's continue what he says further. Look how the Rebbe has such compassion. He won't quote the statement there with inserting the words chas v'sholem. Yoni, the words you don't find the words Moshe Meyer's chas v'sholem. But the Rebbe was so careful, not always, I'm saying he doesn't always say it, but here in writing, it's interesting to me that, look, he inserts the words with a line from each side, chas v'sholem. Again, whether he made those two hyphens, I don't know, maybe the publishers put them in, but the words chas v'sholem are from him. So v'zeu sheb Yisrael shebechutz la'aretz chas v'sholem ovdei avodah zara b'torahem the kishem she'oivdim l'shemesh v'layareach just as people who actually worshipped idols, they worshipped the sun and the moon. They bow, and they bow their heads while they're doing the idol worship. That's one of the ways that they do idol worship. So too in Ikamai Kain, who be'elu shehei mesurim unesunim lachshev machshavis rak b'tzorchei gufim bilvad, those that are only busy and occupied thinking about their bodily needs. They do the same thing. How? Kimali, look at this line. Listen to this line. Kimali yishtachavo l'shemesh v'ayoreach. What's the difference whether you actually bow to the sun or the moon, or you bow to Gashmias, that is impacted through the sun and the moon? In other words, there's giving credence to the actual sun and the moon, and then there's giving credence to the result of the sun and the moon. But the bottom line and the commonality between the two is you're giving credence to something other than God. Hence, you're an Ovid Avodah Zorah. Ki amokes hadas, now he explains it, because delving deeply into the Gashmias with your mind, vayiskashnus haseichel bedvorim hanishpoim, and binding your mind to the Gashmias that is impacted, Mehem, from the sun and the moon, meaning all of Gashmis, Harehem kemoya ishtachavo mamash. It's like you're actually bowing to an idol, the sun and the moon. You hear that? Wow, wow, wow. The inyan ishtachavohu harkovos ukfifus komasi. What happens when you bow, when you prostrate? You're making your coma, the state of being stand up is now flattening out, level, equal, where the head and the feet are parallel, are the same level. So the Inyan Shtachavo Harkovas Ukfifas Komasai Rak Begashmis Uvichitzonius. Your head, Moshe, which is supposed to be up here, and your feet are below, when you lay down, you prostrate, you're all on the same level, meaning you're making Gashmias as important to you as is Ruchnius. The Rebbe says even more so. When you do that, and you make your head and your vitality, your inner vitality, right? Because when you lay down, everything is on the same level. Everything's on the same level. So if that's the case, what are you doing? You're inside. Hillel, you're inside. Your highest pnimi is also being flattened out. And is becoming flat, like to the yes, Hillel.
Like those moments when you lie down and your mind is flooded with the thoughts and worries of the day.
Exactly. And the Rebbe says, who owed Garua Yoiser? It's even worse. In other words, like this: when you lay down and you flatten out the outer part, okay, it's not great, like Hillel just said. But imagine your inside energy. Your inside chayas, what your love is, what your desire is, what your passion is about, Yoni, all of a sudden is flattened out. It's worse. It reminds me of the famous vort, and remember this the rest of your lives. Remember this. Reb Mendel Futafas said like this: if someone lost their money, right, they are still a mensch, because you're not bound by your money, or you shouldn't be. If you lost your health, chas v'sholem, you're a half of a mensch. And if you lost your mut, with the Yiddish word mut means your mood, your drive, your ois mensch, you're no longer a mensch. Meaning to say, you lost your manhood. Tremendous word that I always repeat and think about. The drive. It is the drive within our being that can pull us out of anything. And it is the same drive that helps us accomplish whatever we need to accomplish and want to accomplish. So when we talk about the Chayas Pnimi, it's like reminiscent of that same concept, the mood swing. That's why mood swings are such a touchy and important area. Why? It's not just an ADD or ADHD issue discovered by some psychiatrist in the last 30, 40 years. You're talking about the mood is associated with the drive. And Hillel, I'm sure, can tell us more about it at another time. You know, the correlation between the mood and the ratzon. But my little reading of the topic is that there's a strong association. So when your mood is dampened, or in our case, flattened out, it's much worse. That's why he says the words, Hu oid garua yoiser, it's even worse. Vehein horabis machshavos. And these are the many thoughts she'adam mutrit kol hayom, that man is anxious about the entire day. Yomam v'layla, day and night. Lo yanuach, he doesn't rest. V'lo yishkot, and he's not peaceful, tranquil. V'sheicheach al Hashem, and during that time when he feels this way, he forgets God. Ki hu hanoisen l'cho koyach, it is He who gives you the strength, lasses choyil, to be a soldier, to be mighty. And ubirkas Hashem, and practically it means it's the blessing of God. He tashir, it is what makes you wealthy. Umamela harein mokim klal. Therefore, there is no room whatsoever leharibui machshavos v'tachbulos, to the many thoughts and deceptions, plots. You know, in Yiddish we say the little shtikalach. You can ask Yoni; he can tell you, from Brooklyn, the little shtikalach that people make constantly, and we do it in our own way. So the Rebbe says, Ein mokim klal laharibui machshavos v'tachbulos. There is no place for this type of involvement when you realize that birchas Hashem hi tashir. It's the blessing of Hashem that makes you wealthy. The famous quote from Hallelujah, which we say every day, Rabbi's machshavos b'levish. Moshe, many thoughts are a man's heart, but v'atzas Hashem, it's the advice of Hashem, He tokum, it will be sustained. The age-old Yiddish phrase, Mensch tracht und Gott lacht. Man thinks and God laughs. In English it doesn't rhyme. But anyway, Rabbi's machshavos, every day when you say this, stop for a moment and think about it. Rabbi's machshavos b'levish. I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this, and what can I do? Atzas Hashem yisakum. Remember that it's the eights of Hashem. So the way I interpret this for myself, when I have a moment to think about it, is I ask Hashem that my eitzah, my decision, should be in unison with the way you, Hashem, want it to be. So then my Rabbas machshavos will not be for naught and waste. You know how I think going back, my own life, I remember when I was in Marin County. I'll end with this and we'll continue tomorrow in Hashem. I remember we lived in a 538 community planned area called Lucas Valley. So the joke amongst the Balabatim was, we live in Emek Haluchos. It happens to be that George Lucas, the director of I think Star Wars or one of these things, had his light and industrial film studio up the road on Lucas Valley Road. So that's why it was called Lucas Valley Road. It happens to be he parked himself up the road, and we ended up there. The Balabatim that asked me to come as the shliach, the rabbi, they lived there. So it was 538. There wasn't lahavdil a church. There was only homes. and nice homes and a very nice area, a very beautiful area. If you, Hillel, I imagine you were in Marin County. I can't imagine you weren't, right?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could attest to the beauty of in the background, the mountains, and there's a deer, and it's just really gorgeous.
It's one of the most spectacular places anyway.
Yeah. I remember a story within a story. I invited Dr. Yaakov Brower, James Brower, the Lubavitcher scientist of McGill University, an endocrinologist, professor of endocrinology, to talk about science and Torah. I invited him twice, and he said to me, Chaim, he says, if there's a place on earth that's Gan Eden, it's Marin County in your backyard. That's how beautiful. He's coming from Montreal, so you can imagine the difference. Yeah, Hillel, what?
Just as an aside, since you said that story, I heard that when the Kerem Yeshiva, which was established by Noah Weinberg's nephew, I believe,
yes,
was established in Santa Clara, south of San Francisco. So I don't remember if it was Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg or Rabbi Noah Weinberg was visiting, gave a Shabbaton at the yeshiva. And as they're walking home, one of them said to Reb Noach or to Reb Yaakov, "It's like Gan Eden here." And Reb Yaakov's comment was, "Torah will never have a kiyum here."
That's interesting because the yeshiva closed several years later.
That's right.
But anyway, the story I wanted to tell you was that. So, and here, my wife and I were newly married. They rented for us a house, and we had Chabad house and the shul in our house because just my wife and I, and even when we had our son, there was plenty of room. But doing work out of a house, we all know how it's difficult. We all know that now, especially. So we rented a office in the industrial area in the community, which was set for that. I remember the guy Jim Erickson was the owner. Anyway, okay. On the corner, as you came into this Lucas Valley community, there was a gas station. So I had my eye on this gas station. And I said, one day I'd like to build a 770 on the gas station. So everyone passing Lucas Valley on the way from, the 101 highway to West Marin will see the big 770. For a 23, 24-year-old Lubavitcher, this is their dream, putting up a 770. How am I going to get the gas station? And I put a lot of time into it. And I started to call and fax and write to Texas it was a mobile, I think a mobile or a Texaco, I forget now. Exxon. You can't imagine how many hours and days I put into, and guess what? One day they found, they closed up. I don't know why, whether they found gas on the ground and all that, but it was for sale. I said, wow, Hashem, you're answering my tefillas. And I worked, and nothing came out of it. I never got it. For many, I forget the reasons, but it just wasn't bashert. So when I'm learning this, it's, in a way, I was doing it for Kedusha. I was doing it for Torah. I was doing it for Yiddishkeit, But HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a different plan. So here, in a way, outwardly, I wasted so much time and so much energy. I think I probably still have the files. You can't imagine. And I got to big windows. I got to big people. And I still didn't get the property. And I was offering a good dollar for it. I was raising funds and had a board, and we were gonna, it didn't come our way. So I look back and I say, we need to have a bracha from Hashem that the energy that we exert and spend on the Gashmias involvement in our lives, whenever those periods are, should bring positive results that Hashem says, I want this to happen. You need a bracha for that, really. Because otherwise you can be spinning your wheels and it's very tiring and very costly and everything else, and you get nothing. And it's a balancing act with a great bracha from Hashem when you're able to know when to go and when to stop. What do they say in the stock market? Just as it's important to know when to buy right, you have to know when to sell right. Okay? There's a go and there's a stop. Yeah, and that's something that I remind myself when we learned this section of the Maamar about the parnasa, that we ask Hashem, we want parnasa and we need parnasa and we're doing parnasa, but please help us, not exert ourselves and wasting time and energy and getting nothing out of it. And listen, at the end of the day, if you do what you're supposed to, it's right. You might not get the Exxon property because Hashem doesn't want you to have it. So I'm not saying that there wasn't a meaningful process that I went through, but at the same time, why not spend that process on another property where you will get it, So you need mazel. We spoke about mazel yesterday, meaning we need Hashem to bless us to make, it's called in the Musar Svarim and the Hasidus Svarim, it's called Hatzlacha Bizman. Have you ever heard that term? Hatzlacha Bizman. It's a special bracha. For someone, if someone can say that throughout their life, or many times in their life, they were matzliach with their time, that the effort and energy they put into the projects that they did were not wasted, but were matzliach, that's a special bracha. Very special bracha. I think we had a good farbrengen and a good cheer. So
Rabbi,
yes.
Rabbi, it's what you said. You said about the stock market. So lahavdil, there was a country singer named Kenny Rogers.
Okay.
Kenny Rogers. You got to know when to hold him, when to fold him, and when to walk away.
Okay. You just transformed Kenny Rogers' song into something of kedusha. Let's go again. You have to know when to.
Kenny Rogers is Rashi Tevis Kenny Hiratzon.
So Kenny Rogers is. So what is it? When to hold them, when to fold them, and when to let go.
When to walk away.
When to walk away. Okay.
From the poker game.
Yeah. Sei gesund, everyone. Have a great day. See everyone tomorrow. Bye-bye. Take care.